What is up, everyone? On this week's episode, we talk about attachment, how we find ourselves attached to things and the memories, and how do we deal with letting them go. And we also dive in when things don't work out how we think they're going to be. How do we still show up? How do we ask for support? And how do we get through it? Looking forward to what you think.
How's everybody doing?
Well, I'm not the best, but I'm all right. Yeah.
Jon, how you doing?
I'm doing much better. I started the day in a different type of energy, but was able to shift, and it's been a really good day. Woke up at 6:30 in the morning, knew I was not going back to bed, so I hit up the Culver City stairs and started the day early, seeing the sunrise, and that kind of shifted everything. So it was a good little shift right there.
That's great. I love that.
How about you?
Good. I'm grateful. I've been, we have all of our stuff in one place. We talked about it a lot on the Tuesday live, and it's brought up a lot of stuff, which has been awesome. I know that you're not always able to catch the lives, but we talked about the fact that so we opened up the first box of stuff right out of our pod. This is from when we were.
Wait, are you saying on your live?
Well, we didn't open it on the live, but we were talking.
Okay.
At the live, and we had a pod of stuff that's been in LA for the last 2-3 years, and so that means that 3-year-old habits. It's funny that we just happened to be talking about this stuff last week, but 3 years of habit breaking and changes and growth and emotional growth were suddenly kind of thrust upon me in both a good way of being like, hey, look at how much, as you said last week, I think it was that your therapist said, Jon, look at how much you've grown. You're able to take this kind of thing, but instead of doing that thing that you just told us about, I fully just started spiraling down the hole of, we opened the first giant Tupperware, and it's clothes. And we opened the second giant Tupperware, and it's just clothes and shoes and stuff. And we opened the third one and the fourth one. And then the fifth one was like Christmas stuff. And then the sixth one was like my stuff. And then we started getting to this point where I was actively looking at boxes and being like, okay, that's just all books. Okay, well that's okay. That's okay. Where's her fucking stuff? And I could see panic setting in on her face because neither one of us could figure out where her stuff was. And it's because I had just overwhelmed the relationship in so many ways, one of which was in spending. That was a huge issue for us early on, was just financial on my end, spending a lot and not sharing that with her, even though we had joint bank accounts. I mean, it was a whole thing. And so that all ahead, looking at all of these mistakes made instead of dealing with the issues that were causing them. And it was beautiful to be like, wow, we're past this. But we had emotionally dealt with it. I had emotionally dealt with it. She had emotionally dealt with it. And we've come so far since then. But to then have a final physical stamp of approval / disapproval on it and be like, okay, cool. And then to be able to take 4 giant Tupperwares to Goodwill on the first night and be like, here we go. This is good. I can do something with the mistakes. That was nice. So overall, I'm good, man. It's coming together. Our home is starting to shape up. It's been a while.
Did you find her stuff?
Yes, we ended up finding about one large Tupperware's worth of stuff. Seriously, I know. This is in addition to the fact that I had to cart in my fucking surfboard and my bike and 2 guitars and a keyboard. I don't play guitar or keyboard excessively well. Not well enough to have a very nice Martin and a very nice Strat and an electric keyboard. I can play what is it? DC and but I mean, like, like,
You can play that piano though. I heard you. I
yeah,
heard you live and in person. You can play that piano.
a little, just.
You played the shit out of Ordinary People.
It's very kind. Thank you.
You did. You did. I said, this white boy got soul. Who let him in here? Who let him in here? Who let? This isn't okay. This is not okay. Don't even take your clothes off. Just sing. They'll take their clothes off for you if you sing.
Oh, I'm blushing.
That day you were the most refreshing. You were the most refreshing like talent in the whole audition, because all the guys were. I mean, if we're gonna be honest, all the guys were strippers. Like all the guys this audition for Magic Mike John live were a bunch of guys from Vegas, like locals. We had a couple of specialties. We were just specialties, if you will, right? And because the key to the show is specialty. It's like you're gonna dance with your clothes off, but you're gonna bring an element to the show that doesn't already isn't is out of the ordinary, right? So you have a guy who, like right now, the show is like a guy who's into motorcycles, and he's a badass, and he's a drummer. There's a guy who's like this big, massive gentleman. There's this guy who can sing really, really well. There's a guy. Every guy has a unique characteristic about themselves that they display on the show, and women can say, "Oh my God, the cowboy! Oh my God!" But at this audition, it was just the craziest and the most. What's the word you would use? I keep thinking about this guy who spun one of the choreographers around in a chair so hard that her contact flew out. Her contact came out. That was Allison.
Allison.
Her contact flew out, and I was like, "This is."
And was like, no,
no,
doing
no.
This is what
she's like.
He then did the dance, and my buddy was doing behind the scenes. Like shooting behind the scenes for them, also happens to be a b-boy and an amazing dancer, and he also did stuff. Like they were like, this is what it needs to be. It's got to come from a place of being a gentleman, a very incredibly sexy gentleman. And then this motherfucker goes out there, we're all dancing, and I'm like, okay, all right, I can do this. I feel this. I like this. This motherfucker gets out there and just. It was gross. You saw everybody.
That's the word. Thank you. That's the word. That's literally the word.
Because nobody in that room could do what you did. And that was, I mean, I think that was a point that we've talked about this a lot, but that we kind of together on was there was this mutual respect for, and I still to this day, I appreciate it so much when you say it. It always catches me off guard because I forget how, special that was. So thanks.
It was such a special time. But anyway, besides the point, 2 guitars, a piano, 1 box for your wife, 17 boxes for Colt. You gave away 4, but then you're now pairing that with what you've accumulated post that pod.
You know what the funny thing is? I've accumulated almost nothing.
Really?
Oh yeah, no,
because it's from the past.
Yeah, because that was the issue. We talk about it a lot. The LA fight, the fall fight. That was a make or break moment for us, and from that moment on, I couldn't be that same person, because if it was, then I was going to lose her. Like, no fucking thank you. So, she kept having me like, that's not you anymore. It's okay. Cause I was fully just spiral. I was going off the ledge. I was like, we're going to shit. It's some, I didn't even mean it. It was,
good little wake up call.
Yeah.
Just how much stuff we accumulate.
Yeah.
That's interesting. By the way, who has topic for tonight?
John.
I do have a topic, but I think we're kind of building a topic here, which I really like, because I think it's a part of it is like how we attach ourselves sometimes to things. How we have that like sweater that we haven't worn in a year, but man, I remember that summer I wore, and it was so many good memories. Or I remember that shirt, man, I used to get so many good compliments. The last year I was in different shape, and that doesn't fit me the same way. But man, when I wore it, I got so many compliments. I don't want to get rid of this thing. And like, it's so easy to like accumulate all these things. So I love that we're like, the topic is coming. And I mean, my topic can come in a little bit later if I see a place transition, but I love that we're talking about this, because I think as we become better refining the men we are, there's things we get to let go, both metaphorically and physically. And I think that's an example that you're seeing right there.
Yeah. I think there's this kind of thing that I've seen in my sparse social media usage since the kind of Marie Kondo phenomenon. And I think a little bit before that, which is what I think kind of ushered that into such popularity, was this movement towards minimalism. And I guess our generation, or the, millennials and whatever, I make the cutoff by like days or hours. But that movement towards minimalism is something that is, I think, helpful, useful. And also, though, I was talking to Ange about this. I'm probably going to end up making this as a post, but I wanted to take a picture in that closet that I sent y'all a picture of a couple of weeks back when we moved in, because that's what that closet, it's come along just a little bit, just in how I've shaped certain things, but it's the same fucking thing. I got my boots, got my favorite jackets, my favorite shirts, and a pull-up bar. Like but it's not minimalism. It's because there's 4 pairs of cowboy boots, but they are specifically curated to things I love. And I think that there's an interesting kind of balancing act that happens between minimalism and what gives you joy, and that those two things don't have to coincide necessarily. The same way that I think it's kind of put forth now, a lot of times I see it, and people are in sparse rooms, a very like Kanye and Kim house, where they're like, I have nothing that doesn't give me joy. And I'm like, but you don't have to go that far. Like, you can have a pair of running shoes and cowboy boots. Like, I don't think anybody's upset about that.
Right.
I think also both of you coming from the actor world, like there were so many roles that you had to show up in a certain outfit, or you just knew you were going to most likely use it for a future project. And so you have these extra items that you may not wear all the time, but you're going to use them. And they do. I think there was a good, like, before I heard about the whole Marie Kondo, it was the going through each piece of clothing. Have you worn this in the last 6 months? Answer is no. Are you planning to wear this in the next 6 months? The answer is no. Is this replaceable? Because like if it's in a family heirloom, like I have a couple sweaters for my dad that I'm like, one of them's like too big on me, and I want to go get it like fitted for me, but like I'm gonna keep that for a very long time because my dad used to wear it all the time. And so it's like there's certain items like that you can't replace, but a lot of stuff that we keep, we don't need to. Or the other one, which was a good one, is take all your clothes and flip the hanger backwards. So every time you wear it, you flip it over, and then after like 3 months or 6 months, see how many things are still sitting backwards, and just realize like physically this has not been taken off the rack.
I like that. That would drive me.
I think for me, yeah, I think it's a good practice.
Yeah.
Right. It's a really good practice. I have this thing where I give it like a year. I do like a year. Once I start to, like, when I fold my clothes and put them on the top shelf above where I hang my clothes, I look to start to see like how much space do I have between the clothes and the top of the closet, right? And so once it starts to get like tight to put shirts up there or pants up there, I think to myself, what am I actually wearing and what am I not wearing? And that's when I go in and I clean shop. That's when I clean house. But I think for me, this attachment thing goes more along the lines of knowing when to let go and when not to let go of. It's like, for me, once I'm out of a relationship, the hardest thing for me to let go of is like the photo we took, the book they gave me, the letter they wrote. Like, the hard thing for me is that, whatever that may be. And sometimes it's like a year later and I'm seeing someone new and they come over and they're like, what's this? And I'm like, don't worry, don't worry about it, because I won't throw it away. But I had to deal with what is my issue with throwing it away, right? And a lot of it has to do with a through line in acting. And a through line in acting is you always need to have a hope. Like, it can't be grim. Like, no one wants to, even if you're playing a dark character, there has to be some hope for this character in some regard, right? So hope has always been my through line in certain things when it comes to relationships ending and relationships breaking, which is maybe we'll get it back one day, maybe we'll whatever one day, maybe whatever. So I started to put in this practice of that chapter is done. This doesn't mean anything for the future if I throw away that photo, if I get rid of that receipt, if I get rid of that wine bottle cork, if I get rid of that photo album that we have together, that Halloween happened, right? But now I can let it go. And then the opposite of this is if I'm hurt, I go hardcore machete. You're unfriended, you're unfollowed, every photo we've ever taken is deleted, you didn't exist to me. So the attachment to outcome is what I work on with attachment, is outcome from a hope and outcome from don't you ever come back in my life again. Mm-hmm. That's when it comes to attachment, that's what I work on. It's not really clothes and stuff like that, it's relationships.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would argue that they're one and the same. They're just different. There's a different means of getting there, in the sense mm-hmm. that the reason that I was constantly, like, let's say, purchasing, and I also do, mm-hmm. I do that same thing. I would keep all those things just in case, because, and this is the problem, it comes down to, for me, the materialism came down to image. Mm-hmm. Like I was a hopeless romantic if I had that picture after all.
2 years later, yeah, she comes over for dinner and you're like
totally fine.
And
yeah.
Buy them. Yeah.
Remember this thing? I kept it. And it's just all that bullshit where the same thing that goes into when you buy something, the goal, and when I can only speak for myself. All opinions are my own. The reason I would buy something was two things. There was an image that I had in my head of what this will do for me. It'll fix me. It'll make me feel better. This is the last thing I need. This is what I need. And also what it would make me look like from the outside. How would I be perceived if I had this thing? Would it fix that? And I think that's the same thing as keeping those heirlooms, as it were, not family, but you know what I mean, from the relationships, these trinkets, these tchotchkes, whatever it is. We keep these things because there's a perception from their end. And also, well, it gives us a little something on the back end of the relationship. I'm interested to see, John, what your thoughts are on this, because I don't understand why you wouldn't fully just be like, if you're hurt, be like, I don't need you around. Like, I don't need that energy in my life. I think that's extremely healthy, personally, to be like, mm-hmm. hey, you're not good for me. That action you showed me, what that is. I'm good with this. I don't obviously put a whole lot of stock in social media relationships, so in that way. So I'm with you.
Well, I think it's the sentimental memories that come with certain things, because mm-hmm. it's like I'm similar to what Brandon was saying. I used to have a hard time letting go, because I would have, especially with certain girls I dated, I have hope maybe one day we're gonna get back together and I'll be that sentimental guy who had still held on to this little note or this little thing, and maybe like this will be the story that we tell our kid and all this stuff. And I finally had to get over, like, that was attachment. It was not letting go, because I'm worried, will this ever happen again? And when I started holding on to, because I don't know when it happened, but there's a certain point that I look at past relationships and not be like, oh man, I love that girl, and I really enjoyed our time. But I look back at like, oh, this is what I learned with that. Like I have one girl I dated, and she gave me like this little llama ornament, and it's a little fluffy, little thing and whatnot. And I kept that because I learned so. Yeah, it's a little llama. It's either llama or taco with me. That's most of the time my gifts are. But I keep that, and because it's like she was so pivotal to me growing up. I grew up in that relationship, and so I don't hold on to it because I miss her. I hold on to it because I think back, and I love thinking back to like parts of my life. Like where did I, like what chapters because one thing I've done that I hold on to, but it's now for my mom, is my mom loves all the stories I have from traveling and all the trips I do and everything like that. And so when I was doing more catering stuff, we would always get lanyards for all these events. And it was our security pass. And so I would collect all of them. And then every Christmas I would sit with my mom and I would basically gift her this. And then I would sit and tell her a story from every single event. Now I don't do events where we have lanyards, but the one thing I have at all these events is I always have a hotel key. And so I save all my hotel keys for all these different places I've traveled and done these events. I always write who I worked with and where it was. And then I give my mom now the hotel keys, and I sit and I share some of the most beautiful hotels I've ever stayed at. I'm able to share, like show her photos and experience from that, but then also tell her where my life and that new level of career has gone. And so I hold on to certain stuff with like, now I'm in a place where like, if I'm holding on to something, I ask myself, am I eventually gifting this to someone, or when's the end date that I don't need to hold on to this anymore? Because there's certain things that like I realized, kind of like what Brandon was saying, is like, am I holding on because it has something to do with my past? And I realized that doesn't really serve. Now I want to hold on to something. Is this something for down the future, or am I holding on because what's the reason I'm still holding on to this? And so I've become much more flexible with like losing. I mean, the other thing that someone taught me, and I really learned a lesson. Have you guys heard of moldavite? The stone? So back in the day when meteor hit Czech Republic, and basically the meteor was so hot that when it hit the ground, it vaporized everything. And all the vapor eventually turned into crystal, and then it fell in the ground. And so to this day, you can still find this moldavite, and it's very energetic. Certain people can't touch it because it's so much, it's so overwhelming. And I've seen it for people. I've seen someone like, oh, what's this? And then like drop it like as if it was like burning hot. They're like, I can't do with it. For me, it was grounding. Like anytime I was angry, I used to have a necklace, I would just hold it, and I'm like, it'd bring me down. I was so good with it. And someone once taught me the lesson that the things we have in our life serve a purpose, and when they no longer serve a purpose, they will disappear and we lose stuff. And I remember this necklace was such a grounding thing, and wasn't until I did my second time of ayahuasca, it was a 2-day experience, and I went through so much change in the 2 days. But in between those 2 days, I literally went from walking to the bathroom to the living room, and in that walk, because I picked it up in the bathroom off the sink, walked to the living room, I picked it up with my shirt, walked to the living room. By the time I threw it down, it was gone. And I had everyone there looking everywhere, could not find it anywhere. And after like 5 minutes of looking, I stopped. I'm like, yeah, everyone, don't worry about it. Like I sat down and did a little prayer where I was like, you know what, thank you to this moldavite for how you've helped me, because it was in my life for like 6 years. I was like, thank you for all the lessons and all the times you've been there. I hope someone else can enjoy this. I hope someone else can now finds it and gets to go with it. And so things, just there's a meaning for it, but a lot of it's not meant to be there forever. And so if someone else can enjoy it, it continues being sentimental for someone else. It's like one person's trash, another person's treasure. But I will say one story that I always bring, like, and it came to mind because it always comes to mind. I remember buying a brand new pair of sandals, and I went to Dominican Republic, and the first day I went in the water, and I come back, and someone stole one of the two. And I was so mad because I'm like, now no one, like if you're gonna steal it, why not steal both so you can enjoy it? Now no one gets to enjoy it. And I was so mad because I was like, what a waste.
I kind of respect more for only stealing one. Like they were out for fucking blood, man. They were just, I'm gonna cause some pain today. And they saw the easiest, like least volatile way to do it. Just, I'm gonna pick up this fucking sandal. I'm gonna take it with me. Wow.
Oh my God. I think the other end of this for me or the other side of the attachment is being attached to that particular way of doing something, right? So if I cut someone off or whatever the case may be, I become attached to and stubborn with, you never come back into my life. We'll never talk again. There's no room for you to come back in, right? There's that. So I know that I'm attached to, nope, not doing it. You're not allowed back in. But recently, because of what's going on in my life, the person that I had just, I was dating last year, and we talked about in a previous episode, with everything going on, I was like, because of how important she was in my life, I let go of my attachment to, we're not talking again, and reached out, and sent a very simple message with no anything on it. It was just like, here's the situation, here's what's going on, I think you should know. And that was not easy for me, because part of it is like I said, and I'm going to follow through with what I said I was going to do or not do. And then turning out like one of her greatest gifts with me and in our dynamic is whenever I get like, whenever I completely break down and I have like no control of my emotions, and I'm just like, she's literally maybe one of 3 people that I get this way with. My mom being one of them. But leaving where I was at the vet, and I just got the news, and I had no one was there physically. No one was there, but I was like, let me just call. And as we were on the phone, I just had a fucking breakdown. And with me, it's weird because we talk about vulnerability a lot as men. And I have to be honest, like very just honest. We talk about vulnerability a lot. Shit's tough. Shit's really tough, right? I think I'm going to be more mindful of how I approach it, because be vulnerable, men are vulnerable, vulnerability is strength. But that strength comes with like, when those emotions started rising up in me of like, your dog's gonna die, like he's not gonna be here anymore. As it was rising, everything in me was like, no, pushing it down, and pushing it down. It's like, but you're vulnerable, Brandon. You're open, Brandon. But everything in me was like, if you let this shit go, it's a fucking massacre emotionally. And she's one of those people where she'll say something to me and I'll feel that crap and it's a wrap. So now I'm fucking crying, I'm hyperventilating, and all I can hear is breathe. Breathe, Brandon, breathe. That's all I can hear, but I'm also like fucking just flooded with emotion. But in that moment, it was exactly what I needed. And I think if I would have stuck with my, we're never talking again, I wouldn't have called her. I would have sat there in front of that vet's office by myself, pissed. I was pissed at the vet. And I tried to explain to him, I said, I'm not mad at you. You didn't do anything wrong, but this is showing up as anger right now. And I don't know who the fuck to be mad at. So that's part of it too, I think, when we talk about attachment, like, are you attached to something that could be healthy in certain regards, but if you stay on it and you stay attached to it, you may miss something, because things change, people change, circumstances change, life changes. It's a hard reality to accept and walk in, but you're attached to the safety of controlling the outcome. So what happens when you let go of that control and let the outcome or whatever possibly could happen? You may be surprised at what happens when you let go of, I've controlled this outcome. So there's that, letting that go and letting whatever magic's supposed to happen.
I think the thing that you are touching on unintentionally is exactly the thing that we've talked about a few times and that I backtracked on, which is, and this is the point that I was always trying to make. Not living in absolutes is in this. There are certain moments that I think there are certain rules that you need to have, and then the exception proves the rule, right? And this may be one of them. Not living in, I'm definitely never doing this again. In that moment, you were definitely never doing that again, because in that moment, there was no necessity for you to do that.
Right. Right.
It's such an easy, 2 words, but never say never, because you don't know. And again, we go back to that balancing act of something, again, we've talked about a lot, which is letting it happen and making it happen, right? You have no, at the end of the day, you have no real hand in the outcome here. And same kind of with the relationship. You only have a certain amount. And I think it's really beautiful that in the face of everything that you're going through, that you prioritized yourself. And this is what I would say some would categorize as self-love, that action where you didn't sit there and just get angry and rip your truck apart, because that's what a lot of us do. I mean, that's what a lot of us as men, that's what a lot of people do. We bury those emotions down, but something's going to come up. And what is that usually? What is right next to that? What's fucking sad adjacent is anger. And I'm proud of you. I mean, yes, it's easy for us to, talk about vulnerability. Even that's hard. But to go through it speaks volumes about how much the situation at hand means to you, and how much you handling it to the best of your ability means to you. The integrity of you as a person, I think, is on display here. So cheers to that.
Cheers.
Well, and it's how timely that was actually going to be my question for today. Is when life doesn't happen how we think it's going to happen, and we can't control the outcome. We are having to accept a situation that we don't want to deal with. How do we ground ourselves? Because it's like, for myself, like I remember I used to go smoke weed, like numb the pain. I mean, just numb the pain, and then I can think, I can intellectualize my feelings. I'll make sense of it, which really I'm just discounting the pain. So I've realized, okay, so I had to stop smoking weed. I haven't smoked weed in a while, so I can really feel everything. But how do you guys deal with when life doesn't happen how we think, or like something happens out of the blue that like blindsides you, and the triggers that are coming, like or even sometimes you don't. Sometimes it shows up and it's like, there's a trigger. The trigger has been turned on. In this moment, okay, well, this is what I normally do. And in the quote that I posted last week, if I want new outcomes, then we have to change our old behavior.
Yeah. It was, if I want a new future, I can't repeat old patterns.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so in that, it's just like, how do you guys catch yourself when you see the emotions showing up? Like, Colt, when you saw those emotions showing up for you, that's like, all this is, you just almost see yourself spiral. And like, it could be you have Ange, and like, you knew who you could call in that moment. Are there other things that you guys have that your go-tos? Like, that was for me this morning. It's like, I need to work out. I need to get out of my body and like get this extra energy out. So I'm curious to see what are some ways that you guys use.
Brandon?
It varies for me. It depends on the emotion, and it depends on the depth of it, right? There are some things that are very manageable, right? Like, there's some things that are manageable. There are some things that are so deep in me that's when I am scared and I don't have an answer. Like, I'm scared of like how it's going to come out. how I manage. So I'll start with the ones that are manageable. The ones that are manageable, I typically, and we talk about this a lot, I take time to like slow down my thoughts, slow down my breathing, and like assess it. I'll use a prime example. At the vet, and I guess we'll talk about it because there's two portions of this. So at the vet, and for all those who are watching, I have an older dog. He's in the fourth quarter. He's in the golden hour of his life. So I have to make a decision soon. Soon could be a month. Soon could be 2 weeks. Soon. But I could handle the information the vet was giving me. So as he was feeding it to me, I was just like, okay, here are the facts about what he's saying. He has a fever. He's this, he's that, right? So as he was saying it, I was like, I was able to kind of hear it as it was coming in. And I said, hey, give me 5 minutes to process this. That was the manageable part of it, was receiving the information. I took 5 minutes because I didn't feel the need to be impulsive and make a decision right there. I do that often with different things that come my way. I'll take time to process it, whether it's 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour. I'll sit alone, I'll process it, and then I'll come back once I have a clear understanding of what needs to happen next. The part that I didn't have control over was the emotions that followed. That's where I didn't have like a tool in my toolbox. My instinct said, call Alex. That's what my instinct said. Call Alex. I don't know how this is going to go. And she didn't pick up at first. So then I really freaked out. I was like, no, fuck it. I'm on my own here. And as I was walking back to the vet, she called me back. And she's like, hey, I just got to teaching class. Like, what's going on? So the timing was immaculate because I was ready to go back. But I was walking back like pissed. Like I really was. But I needed to like really cry and get it out. So that's that particular instance is sometimes you can handle information, but when things are emotional and deep, you don't really, and for me, I'm speaking for me, you may not have the right tool to manage it. You just kind of you're at the whim of whatever comes next, whatever comes out, whatever that wave looks like, you kind of roll with the wave. And then whatever comes next, because this shit's going to be up and down for the next couple of weeks. Some days I'm going to have a good day. Some days I'm going to have a really bad day. And I'm not going to try and we've talked about this, I'm not going to try and control it. Like, I'm not going to control the fact that something I really, really love is leaving my life soon. What I do have control over is, okay, I'm going to get up today. I'm going to go pet on him today. I'm going to go feed him today. But if that thought comes of, fuck, he's not going to be in his bed tomorrow, I have to just let that out. I have to just let that be what it is. And I think that's something that I think people can take from our conversation, which is some things are manageable and some things you have to just let flow through you and feel it.
Yeah. I mean, there's not really unfortunately that should be the end of the episode. I mean, I know we're going to keep talking, but like, that's the truth of it. Right. And on a miniature scale, when it comes to clothes, on a grand scale, when it comes to life and those we love, there's no better way to say it. With regards to how I specifically deal with it, I have a couple of levels that I'm fortunate to have to go through, right? Get to go through. One of them, the first one is not Ange. The first one is that initial response in me going, can I shut the fuck up and just think through this? Rarely is it the case where I can on a large issue. But I've been getting better about it. I've worked really hard not to tell her certain things. I've worked really hard to keep very large issues at bay. I have a nephew who I spoke to for the first time this week. He's 16 years old. And I didn't tell her about that for days, for the sole purpose of making sure that, and I knew I was going to, and I had been kind of texting with him, and he got cast in Your Good Man, Charlie Brown at his school. It's his first musical. And this boy that I bought, I was in Japan when he was born, and I bought him this little snowsuit 16 years ago and never gave it to him. And I had to deal with that. I had to recognize that I selfishly, for reasons that had nothing to do with him, did the exact same thing in certain ways that had happened to me that, again, had nothing to do with me. And I had relived that pattern. That was something that I had to come to terms with on my own before I went to her. Now, Angelina is a backstop to certain other situations that sneak up, the ones that kind of do this where they overwhelm me, whether it's emotional, family stuff. Sometimes it's just seeing the wrong name that brings up the wrong things. And she is that emotional backstop. I'm very fortunate to have that. I also work really hard to nurture that so that I have that backstop. That's a big part of love, like of our love, is having that moment of knowing every day, I don't need you right now. I love you. I want you. I like you. And there may come a time where I need you, but I'm not doing this because I'll eventually need you. I'm doing it just because I love you. Like in this moment, this is what I want to do. And I'm fortunate that when those things happen, she's there. And then there's one final one that's just beyond the backstop of her. And that's in the darkness. And that's where I go when I've either exhausted that opportunity with her, within myself or with her. If I've talked to her too much about too many things, I'm just bringing up, tons of shit. Or if there's just something that she can't help me with, because that's the truth. At the end of the day, you are your person, which is why, whether it's self-awareness or self-love or however we describe it and define it, you are your final answer. You are your place. And so in those very rare occasions that have become increasingly more rare, half-life keeps extending, I get very literal. And it comes down to the integrity of who I am or I'm not going to be. And that's it. And the single most important one was something Brandon and I kind of loosely talked about yesterday, which has to do with the same thing. When I got sick and she was in the hospital for 2 weeks getting blood transfusions and they couldn't get her cell count up, I went home and Ange had just left to go to the Aladdin tour, literally 24 hours before Maya got sick. And I think it was all of this emotion of moving around everywhere, and then mom's gone, and where's, like, just everything was different. We're in a new apartment in a new city, and it was just Missy and I at the house. And I was just looking at her and I was like, okay. And I accepted it. And in that moment I dropped, I hadn't told Ange because she was in her first day of rehearsal for Aladdin. I hadn't done anything. I hadn't told anybody. I was just sitting with it. And that was the first time that I skipped all the backstops. There were no fucking anything. I went straight from acceptance to, I looked at Missy and I remember thinking, how dare you? How dare you? In that moment, how dare you give up? You have no information yet. And that was before I really had anything. And I lost it. I went into the bathroom. I like full on Love Actually, like sobbed quietly into a towel because I was so scared. And then I walked back out and I had decided I will only do what I can.
Yep.
What I can do is make dinner and give love to this little motherfucker. And then in the morning, and I would, for 2 weeks, they were so kind at this vet. They let me go. And as long as nobody was in that particular room, I would sleep in this room, and they would bring Maya in and she would just lay there, and I would just sleep with 6-8 hours a day. And sometimes I'd go in for the first couple of hours and then come back. But I remember that being one of those moments where you just do what Brandon just said. You decide, this is what I can do.
Yeah.
I will do what I can do, whatever that is. So yeah, that's how I deal with it. I try to deal with it myself. If I can't, I go to the backstop of those that I love. Sometimes it's my dad more than anybody else. It's Ange. Sometimes it's y'all. I call you sometimes. Like you look to those you love, and then beyond that, you have to remember that the first is also the last. Like it's you.
Yeah.
Just gonna decide that.
Yeah, I think building on, honestly, what Brandon was saying, it depends on the emotion that's coming up, who reach out to or whatnot. But I think also what Colt's saying is it starts with us, and like driving is usually like one of the easiest way, because sometimes I used to think it was me running away from the issue. I'd get in a car and just start driving. But what I realized was just like, this was a good way for me to really check in with myself and really see where I am at with the whole situation. And then I obviously drive back. Eventually I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to turn around and face this. And it's kind of like I was telling you guys last week, like I drove all the way to Ventura because I wasn't ready to face it yet. I just kept dealing with like all this different stuff piling on. And it wasn't until I stopped, accepted what it was, accepted, okay, this is the situation. It's like, these are the facts. Can't do anything about this. This is where things are at. This is what I'm dealing with. And I'll ask myself, is this like, again, I'll ask myself, can I handle this myself? And even if I can, should I be keeping this to myself? Or should I be asking for support? Because even as much as I can be keeping this to myself, am I just keeping to myself so I can suppress it? Because I used to be a person that I don't want to burden other people with my problems. I don't want to bother like this person because they already have so much going on. And I'm reading this great book right now called on codependency. And it's fascinating because it was something I heard from a quote to led to a conversation with my therapist to just multiple things. And it goes back to an old friend, going back to childhood stuff, but realizing what codependency is and how that shows up. And it's one of the issues with the codependency is it's for, let's say in the sense of alcoholics, because that's where a lot of it stems from. If one person is married to a partner who's alcoholic, that person is going through stuff. And so the person who's trying to help them, eventually that they're the one who becomes codependent. They're trying to help them so much and put themselves like on the back burner, just let me help you. Like, okay, I'm gonna get you out of this hole. And like, okay, now you're in jail. Let me take care of that. And like, I'm trying to help you. Why are you not doing this? And it's all, you just give. And eventually turns into resentment and anger and all this stuff. And one of the things, I didn't have that situation, but what was for me was I would give, but I would see that I'm helping a person who's struggling. And so the person I would love to reach out to the most, I can't, because I see their struggles and I don't want to add to their plate. So I'm just going to keep it to myself. And that's where literally the codependency comes from. I can't share with that person. I can't. So now it's my thing. And then again, anger and resentment, and it just piles on it. And realizing like when it comes to like my personal like guy stuff, just as men, what we deal with is like talking to you guys on this channel. And I have one other buddy of mine, and I've actually a couple of friends that I can reach out to and be like, yo, this is, I just need to talk. And then I also have a lot of female friends, and I have my mom, that when it's like, yo, I have emotions that are showing up. I need to understand these emotions, or can I get a female perspective on this situation? And just being able to know who to talk to, who to reach out to. because a lot of these people that we reach out to care for us. They're going to want the best for us, and they're going to give us an opinion, or not opinion, but they give us a perspective to perhaps help us just deal with what it is. Because like I have certain friends I don't call, especially when shit goes wrong, because what they would love to do is give me advice on how I should live my life or how I should handle this. And at times we don't need that. Like I don't need you telling me how to live my life. I need you to just show me a perspective and let me decide if I want to take that on.
Well, this brings up, I'm so sorry, I got to cut in. I wanted to ask, what do you do? And then Brandon, if we need to circle back to this, that's totally fine. I just want to get it out of my brain because I don't know if I can hold on. What do you do when, and do you ever find yourself in this situation? I know I do very often, or not. I find myself in this situation a lot where I'll call somebody that I'm like, they're going to be able to help me with this. And I call and they just have nothing in nothing that you haven't already gone through. And I think that it's, whether it's a matter of perspective or those things, do you ever encounter that where you're like how do you deal with that moment when you do reach out, when you're like, I'm going to be vulnerable, I'm going to fucking reach out. And they're like, man, that's crazy. I'm like, oh, do you go through that? And what do you do in that situation?
I mean, I had that happen a couple of days ago. It happened with my mom. I called my mom and I was like, I don't know. I think my mom's gonna help me with this. And I was like, you know what? I text her. I'm like, hey, I'm driving back. I'm going over the canyon. I'm calling you in like 10 minutes. I would love to like talk to you about it.
Go to the canyon.
I've been just putting your mom on blast. You could have said Jimbo.
Literally.
But that's what I love about that's what I love about
being vulnerable, dude. He's being vulnerable.
No, and I love it because I'll tell you why I brought up my mom, and it's because in that conversation, my mom gave me, and that's the thing. When people care about us, they'll sometimes tell us something that it's because it's our best interest. They have our best interest at heart. And so she's completely ignoring what I'm actually talking about, and she's like, "Don't even deal with that." I'm like, "I have to." Like, I have to deal with this. So her advice was just like, no. Like, when it comes to this, deal with this. Do these things. And I just realized, I'm like, no, okay. So just kind of just like you just said, went over her head. And and I just simply said, you know what? Thank you, Mom. I don't think this is really landing for me. And I'm just going to take more time for myself and just to think it out. And I was able to talk to her the next day because she felt bad. She's like, hey, I'm sorry I didn't have the advice. I'm like, no, there's nothing wrong with it. The thing I appreciate is that I can at least reach out to you. You're going to give me the best interest perspective. But if it doesn't land for me, that's okay too. I'm just going to ponder it myself, or maybe someone else to reach out, but being grateful. Because it's one thing when you reach out to someone, and I was talking to a buddy, actually Corey, yesterday, Brandon. I don't know if Colt, you know Corey. But we were talking about the whole idea of when you're calling someone, not picking up their stuff. And it's so easy when you call someone and you're going through something and be like, this is what I'm dealing with. And if you're an empath, it's so easy to pick it up because you feel for them. You don't want them to feel for that. And so being able to just know, I'm like, hey, you know what? Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you allowing the space for me to vent or for me to complain or for me to whatever it is. And just coming in a place of gratitude. But this isn't landing with me right now. And I'm actually just going to go a different direction. And hopefully they don't take it personally because they gave us what they, at the moment, thought was best. And we move on. But I was glad because I had that follow-up conversation with my mom. And my mom was able to let it go and be like, oh, that's fine. That's certain things I'm not going to be able to help you with. I'm like, cool. And we just continue on talking about other stuff. What about you, Brandon?
Yep. I mean, it's interesting because I'm typically, how do I say this? I don't really call people. I text you guys and told you what was going on, but I don't call people and say, hey, I need to talk. Like, it's not really a habit I have. And what's been interesting about this whole thing with Bear has been the amount of people who have just been like, what do you need? How can I, like, what can I do for you? How can I, what do you, if you just want to talk on the phone, let me know. So sometimes for me, it's not even actually like having the phone call and rehashing out everything again. And he's got 2 weeks, and it's just knowing that the support is there that gives me the strength to say, today I had a really good aha. So I told you guys, like, end of last summer, whatever the case may be, like 2.5 months of depression. But I knew the habit that came from it, right? Which was like just letting my room go awry. My room is my sanctuary. So it's like my room's going awry. Let me make sure that this time around, like, let me start to get ahead of those habits before it's 2 months down the road. I can still be sad. I can still feel it, but don't let this become a repeat thing. You get sad, room goes awry, stop working out, start drinking more, X, Y, and Z. So because of the support that I've had around me, I've found the strength to say, I'm going to feel it, but my life doesn't have to go into shambles too. I still have priorities. I still have another dog that still needs my love and attention, who still needs a walk, who still needs to be played with, who still needs attention and time. I can't neglect him. So I got to go spend time with him. I have a horse. I have to go ride. I have to go spend time with him. Like, but all that's happening and my insides are fucked. Like like emotionally right now, even when I hopped on the call, not that I didn't want to get on the call, but when I got on the call, I was like, I have to be here for you guys. Like, I have to be here because this is what we do. And if it comes out in the episode, I know it's going to serve a purpose. Like, if my emotions come through on this call, it's going to serve a purpose. But I have a responsibility. I've committed to doing this. So it's good to have someone say, "Are you okay today?" That has been extremely helpful. Extremely helpful. So for one, I'll say it on here. Thank you both for, in your own time outside of our group text, just being like, "Hey, what's going on?" Or just pick up the phone and calling me. Where are you at? You're probably going to go see Smokey Joe. You're probably doing this, but I just want to talk to you real quick. Even if I say I'll call you back in 15 minutes, John, the other night, I didn't call you and you called me at like 9 o'clock because you were like, "No, I'm gonna show you that I'm here." And it's appreciated because I will disappear. Like, you guys, I'll be texting less. I won't be as vocal. I won't post as much because I'm just in my feelings. So it's nice to have you guys kind of just keep me present, keep me living while I'm going through it.
Well, we love you. So I'm happy that we get to be able to do that. There's a couple of things in both of those that I like. One is that this constant, circle back to, we do what we can, right?
Yeah.
You make the calls you can, you do the things you can, you control what you can. And I was fully prepared for you to be like, "Nah, I'm not up for it today. Love y'all." And we would have figured it out. It's not a big deal, And that was something that I think both of us, I'm sure, separately prepared for, just because you're going through something very, very big. And I think the thing that I love both of you said was on the opposite ends of it, but I've said on here a lot before, I don't have very many friends. I have, including Ange, less than a handful, like close friends. And I'm right there with you. I think a lot of the people watching this, whether male or female, if we resonate with them, they probably don't call people a lot to vent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the beauty is in a couple of things. One, being able to reach out to people and acknowledge that, like, it's not always going to be your way. And if you're calling them just to get your way, if that's what the relationship is, then that's not healthy. But also being able to go, "Fuck, I really thought this was gonna be the right call. It's not. It's okay. Whether you acknowledge that to them or to yourself, because I know for me, sometimes I'll call somebody and then it doesn't go that way. And I'm like, fuck, that's the first person I've called in 3 months. And fuck me, I chose wrong. And I don't want to call people more often. I don't want to talk to people more often. And I'm, again, fortunate that I have her. But I like that you have both given permission to people watching that you can call people. You can deal with it yourself, but you also need to acknowledge your circle. And Brandon, had you not shared with us what was going on, we wouldn't have been able to know that. I've disappeared on y'all for like 6 of the 7 days between the refinery, and nothing's been wrong. I've just been busy. And it's funny, I'm more active in the chat. I wouldn't actually say that. I was going to say I'm more active in the chat when something's wrong, but it's not that. I find that our chat is more active when there is more to discuss. Our chat and any chats on my phone are not active if there's nothing important to discuss. I don't do non-important things. So when something's important enough and it breaks down that first wall, let yourself do what you need to do. I like that. I love that. I also love, I'm going to second that Jon put his mom on blast. That makes me happy. Just because if you saw that 2 boys were from the South, because we both were like, you know, he said his mom? Did he say he has a friend named Mom? It's not his mom, right? He didn't say that. We were both like, I would never say that about mom. Mom, you did great with the calls.
Well, you asked if that happened, and I was like, that immediately popped in my head. And I was like, that actually happened a couple of days ago.
I appreciate it.
My mom dropped the ball. I'm just like, I know. No.
Well, no, it's not that she dropped the ball. It wasn't because she did give good advice. It just wasn't what I wanted to hear.
Just picked it back up.
No, it wasn't what I wanted to hear or how I wanted to hear it. I was just like, I need to, because there's still stuff I could take from it, but it was just wasn't the thing where I was just like, I finally at one point I was like, Mom, thank you so much. I appreciate the time. I'm gonna jump off the call. I'm just gonna take some time with myself, because I could see myself the way she was saying it. I was just becoming resistant.
Yeah.
So one of the ways to easily get off a phone call with when you can tell, like, that's my whole thing. It's like when I know someone's giving me advice or telling me something I don't want to hear, I start becoming resistant, and now I'm like getting short with the person. And I'm like, before I get short and become aggravated or whatever, let me just go ahead and end it right here. Say thank you for the time. Thank you for I'll catch up with you tomorrow. I'm gonna step away because I'm already in a mix of emotions. I'm already dealing with like 15 different things. I don't want to project anything on you. I'm gonna step away.
But Jon, who is your person that you like when you need your chest cracked open, when you're just fucking messy? Like, I'm talking messy, like boohoo cry, like snot, like hyperventilation. Like, who's that for you?
I don't know if I have like one. I mean, I have one best friend that like I've known since the 5th grade. And
if you got more than one, hey, kudos to you. Like, if you got more than one,
one person, one person on this side is just like,
But I think again, it goes to what you were saying earlier. I think it's the topic. If it's about love, I have like one friend that comes to mind. Whereas if I'm talking about like work shit, frustrations like that, whereas it's like because I went through that a couple of weeks ago where I was scared about my career. I'm like, I didn't realize how much I attached myself to I'm this event producer. Yeah. But I attached to like, I don't even know if my job's coming back. I survived a year of barely working because I had saved, I put things in the right place, and I had little things that helped me out. And I'm like, no problem, I can get through a year. But then I started in 1 week, all my Europe trips for this summer all got postponed to 2022. And it really hit me being like, okay, I thought this is going to be a very fruitful year. Now, granted, 2022 already is stacking up. and I'm like, all right, cool. I just have to get to 2022 now. But it was like a huge identity, not a crisis, but identity shakeup, where I had two friends who I've worked with and they've been in it longer, where I was just like able to really open up and be like, yo, I'm fucking scared. Like, I don't know, what am I supposed to do? So I think it's depending on the topic. And then at the same time, there's times to talk to you guys because of like Colt, you have Parts of Love. Brandon, you have NewAgeGents. Like being able to understand the man that I want to be, who I want to show up. Like I knew my first thought was I'm gonna hit a Brandon. And at the time we went and hung out and just by the fire and just talking for a couple hours.
Yeah.
It's like, so it's depending on the topic, because everyone has a skill, but that's my buddy Chris knows me the longest. So if it's something deeper, like something from my past, I'm gonna call Chris. But Chris is also like, Chris doesn't talk about this kind of topics. Chris doesn't talk about relationships or anything like that. So I couldn't go to him and tell him what's going on in my relationship. He would be a good person to listen. But if I needed to actually have a conversation and grow and stuff like that, like Cole, I mean, when it clicked the day I think it was 2 episodes ago, but when it clicked, I was like, yo, we have someone on the show that has 11 years of relationship together.
Yeah.
I was like, this person's probably gone through a whole bunch of different shit. So it's like being able to, you're going to have more knowledge in that topic than someone who dates here and there. But they're still the person that I would go to for something else kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that call. I like that you called. That was a nice little surprise. I think sometimes also we forget that, or at least I forget that, people also need us. They and that's not to speak of how important that call was on your end, but it was special. I was like, this is cool. This is a nice thing because it reminds me of those 11 years. It puts my things in perspective as well. Brandon, I have some separate things to talk to you about, or with us, but post recording. But it was a beautiful thing to. Sorry, I'll cut that up. It took me by surprise how much talking to you reminded me of the growth that the girls have given me. I'm incredibly proud to have known you over the entire course of you and Baron Austin, and to see that growth. And last night I set aside specific time to sit there with Maya. And I try to give them each a specific amount of time each day, at least at the bare minimum, but to make sure that I took that. And that was something that I was reminded of because of your current trials. And because we had that talk, not just because of what you're going through, but because we had that talk. So I think that there's something to be said for the weight of sharing, the weight of venting. Sometimes it's just that. But love comes in many forms, and it is shared in many. It multiplies in many forms. And yeah. So thank you for loving us enough, for loving Bear enough, for loving Austin enough to reach out. Loving yourself enough.
Yeah. I love that sound. That timing is perfect. How perfect is that timing?